Chapter 8. How's the tutoring going? Mrs. Felty asked me the next day. I still don't really get it, I admitted. Well, it must be osmosis because you got an A on your quiz. I wasn't sure what osmosis meant, but I was pretty happy about that. It was probably the first time I'd gotten an A on anything in math since 2nd grade. I would have skipped home if I didn't need to count the steps. Like I said, I'm not a person who likes change, so you can imagine how surprised I was when I stopped at the lot and saw the dinosaur skeleton that had been torn down. There were people all over the place, men and women in suits and hard hats with cell phones. Bulldozers were plowing up the earth like there was no tomorrow. I almost lost count of my steps. The guy with the brown paper bags and the people with shopping carts full of cans were gone. Only Bertha was left, perched on her folding chair at the edge of the garden, hugging herself against the icy wind. In front of her was a man in a bright yellow hard hat, yelling at her like she was deaf. For the last time, will you get up and move along? Bertha tugged her ski cap further down on her forehead. She peered up at the man. Cinderella met a fella dancing down the hall. Said Cinderella to the fella, come with me to the ball. Said the fella to Cinderella, why don't we just dance here? Said Cinderella to the fella, so good to feel you near. My name is Bertha. I don't care what your name is. My instructions are to level this lot. He touched her elbow. Bertha yanked away with what looked like a lot of strength. She clutched the arms of her chair. I'm not speaking to you, she said. You're a bad man. Listen, it ain't public property anymore. You'll have to leave, unless you like to spend a few days in jail. 3 blind mice, she put up her hands over her ears. 3 blind mice see how they play parcheesi and talk in tongues. No way, Jose. This is my garden. My name is Bertha. This time he pulled her very roughly by the arms. Get your hands off her, I ran over. Startled for a second, he let go. Or you'll what? He took off his hard hat. Or I'll sue you. I couldn't think of anything else. The guy weighed about 300 pounds. What? He snickered. You her lawyer? You can't ruin the garden. There are people who live off the food. Looks like a bunch of dead weeds to me. There are probably some potatoes or some cabbage. Who cares? He interrupted. And in the spring, there's even more. There are all kinds of vegetables and flowers. This garden belongs to a bunch of people. Not anymore, kid, the man sighed. It was as if his anger deflated like a balloon. You want a beam to fall on your head? You want her to get mowed down by a steamroller? This is private property, purchased and owned by L.Q. Cross and Company. This here will be Crossdown's luxury condominiums. I thought it was going to be a housing project. Haven't you heard of urban renewal, kid? Mr. Cross purchased this property from the city. What he was saying would be good for Bett's pets and Wong's, but I'd had something different in mind. I'd pictured the garden getting bigger and bigger, and then the dinosaur being finished, and the gardeners moving right into it. Just go home, lady, he said. My name is Bertha, she repeated. What if she doesn't have a home? I offered. At that, he shifted and looked back at her, and then at me. That's not my problem, he finally said. It seems it is. I lost my temper for a minute. I knew what it felt like to be Sharon Trout and just say any old thing you felt like, no matter how obnoxious. I can put you in jail too, you know. They have jails for kids, he said. Bertha stuck out her tongue at him. Kids, he mumbled. Misguided kids. Fine. Let her sit there and be injured, and all for a few potatoes. Then he walked away. I think you'll have to find someplace else, Bertha, I tried to explain. There must be other places where you can garden. Geese fly south for the winter, Captain, she said, hugging her arms around herself to block the wind. I wished she could do the same.